Hello, students. Welcome to the last lesson of Chapter 2. This is on financial literacy on simple interest. Please open your books and follow along beginning on page 167. Now, before you begin, I need you to complete the following 3 assignments on page 167. You need to complete what you'll learn, and I need you to predict 2 things you will learn about this chapter on financial literacy. Then I need you to do the vocabulary startup. Read about principal, which is the amount of money deposited or borrowed. Then look at simple interest. That's the amount that you have to pay or earn because of the use of the money. And then fill in the blanks with the word bank. The last thing I need you to do is the real world link on the very bottom. So pause the video and work on those 3 things, please. Today we're going to learn how to find interest earned on savings accounts. And then I want you to find the interest owed on loans or credit cards. To begin, we need to learn the simple interest formula. Simple interest, or I, is the product of the principal, P, times the annual interest rate, which is R, and the time, T. And time is always expressed in years. So in your notes on the top of page 168, I would like to have you write this down in your word zone. I is your interest, and interest is the amount you will pay or earn for loaning or borrowing money. Then P in red is the principal. And the principal, I spelled it wrong, pardon me. P-A-L, just like our school principal. But this type of principal is the amount that you start with. Or according to your book, it's the amount of money that you deposit, or maybe the amount of money that you borrow. So this is the amount of money borrowed. And then the rate, or R in blue, R is your rate. And this rate is always a percentage rate, such as like the interest rate. Interest is money that can help you. For example, if you let the bank hold your money in a savings account, they will pay you a percent of interest for keeping their money there. Other times, the interest rate can charge you more money, such as if you have a credit card or a loan that you're borrowing. You might have to owe the bank or the credit card company more because they let you borrow money from them. So rate will always be expressed as a percent, which when we get to the formula, we'll change it into a decimal. The last thing is T, and T represents the amount of time it takes for you to borrow the money and pay it back. Time is always in years, and years, 1 year is 12 months. We might have to convert months to years, so we need to remember that conversion rate there. Once you're finished taking these notes, let's move on to the next example. Number 1 on page 168 says Arnold puts $580 into a savings account. The account pays 3% simple interest. How much interest will he earn in each amount of time? So we have 2 times here. The first one is 5 years. The question is asking how much interest will he earn? So we are going to be trying to solve for I. I represents the interest earned for this example. Because he's putting his money in the bank will pay him 3% simple interest because he put $580 into the bank. Oops, there we go. So the principal that he started with is $580 times the interest rate, and the rate is 3%, but remember 3% as a decimal. 3% is 3 per 100. 3 divided by 100 is 0.03. So I'm going to multiply that times 0.03 for my interest rate times the amount of time. And for number 1, the time is 5 years. So we multiply it times 5. Now all you have to do is carefully type this in your calculator. 580 times 0.03 times 5. Go ahead and calculate that. When you're done, you should get 87. So he will earn $87 in interest after 5 years of keeping his money in the bank. Now let's check example 2 on this same page. And instead of 5 years, we're going to change it to 6 months. Now remember, time also always has to be expressed in years. 6 months out of a year, or 12 months, reduces to 1/2. Since we'll be writing equations, for this I would prefer a decimal. 1/2 of a year is 0.5 years. So let's use this for our time. Everything else stays the same. We're still trying to figure out how much interest he'll earn after 6 months. He still puts $580 in the bank times the interest rate of 3%, which is 0.03 as a decimal. This time, the time is changing from 5 years now to 1/2 a year, or 0.5. Again, in your calculator, type in 580 times 0.03 times 0.5, and the interest they will earn after 6 months will be $8.70 interest earned in 6 months. Notice how it's very similar to $87 in interest, but a lot smaller amount because the amount of time is shorter. Go ahead and try A and B on page 168 and to show your work for credit. Pause the video to work those out, please. Okay, example 3 begins on page 169. Now we're looking at interest on loans and credit cards. And if you read with me on the top of this page, it says if you borrow money from a bank, you pay the bank interest for the use of their money. You also pay interest to a credit card company if you have an unpaid balance. Use the formula I equals principal times rate times time to find the amount of interest owed. So for number 3, it says Rondell's parents borrow $6,300 from the bank for a new car. The interest rate is 6% per year. How much simple interest will they pay if they take 2 years to repay the loan? So the question asks us to find the amount of interest that they will owe the credit card, or I'm sorry, the bank. Now, the principal is the amount that they borrowed. So principal is going to be in red, and the principal is $6,300 times the rate, which I'm going to put in blue. And the interest rate is 6%. Now, 6% means 6 per 100. When you change that fraction into a decimal, 6 divided by 100 is, think about it like this, move the decimal 2 places to the left, it's 0.06. Test it on your calculator just to double check if you're not sure. So we multiply that by the interest rate of 6%. And the time it takes is in green. The time is 2 years, so we can just keep it times 2. In your calculator, all you have to do is type in 6,300 times 0.06 times 2. When you calculate that, you will get a total of 756. So the parents will pay in interest on top of their car loan. So if they borrowed $6,300, they're going to have to pay that amount back plus the $756 in interest back as well. Now let's look at example 4 just below this. It says Derrick's dad bought new tires for $900 using a credit card. His card has an interest rate of 19%. That's pretty high. If he has no other charges on his card and does not make a payment, how much money will he owe after 1 month? So let's take a look at what it's asking for. It's asking how much he will owe. Well, you will have to pay your interest, so he's going to owe an amount of interest. The principal that he borrowed is $900. Now, the interest rate is 19%. So 19% is 0.19. Just move the decimal 2 places left. Times 0.19 times the amount of time, and time is always measured in years. Now this gets a little tricky because he only borrowed the money for 1 month. 1 month is 1 out of 12 months because 12 months is a year. So what I would do is I would take 1 over 12. And for this example, you can keep it as 1 over 12, or you can change it into a decimal. I'm going to use a calculator and find out 1 over 12, or 1 divided by 12, and I get 0.083 repeating. So I'm going to use this. Keep that number in your calculator, and I'm going to multiply these 3 numbers, 900 times 0.19 times 0.03. When I calculate that, I get a total of $14.25 because I round up to the nearest cent. So $14.25 is the amount of interest. Now the total he owes, because he has to pay back the $900 that he borrowed, to find the grand total, you need to add the amount of principal plus the amount of interest. The principal borrowed was $900. The interest that he got charged was $14.25. So when he pays back his grand total, he's going to owe the credit card $914.25. All right, I'd like you to try C and D on the bottom of page 169. Remember to show your work. If you have any questions about these examples, please ask them in class. I will be giving out extra credit dojo points for anyone who writes down a question from tonight's homework. So please think of a question you could ask for a free dojo point. Now, example 5 is our last example. This is Luis is taking out a car loan for $5,000. He plans on paying off the car loan in 2 years. At the end of 2 years, Luis will have paid $300 in interest. What is the simple interest rate on the car loan? Now, this question is asking us to find something different. We know the principal that he borrowed is $5,000. Let's highlight that. There we go. So P is $5,000. We know it says at the end of 2 years, so we know the time here is 2 years. So T is the time, which is 2. And we know the interest because it said he will have paid $300 in interest. So this time we actually know I, which is 300. I, or interest, equals the principal times the rate times the time. So the only thing we're missing right now is R, which is the rate, because the question asks us to find the simple interest rate. Now what we'll have to do is we need to combine and simplify. 300 equals, I'm going to multiply 5,000 times 2, which is 10,000, times the rate, which is R. Divide both sides by 10,000 to isolate our variable R. 10,000 divided by itself makes 1. 1 times R equals R. 300 divided by 10,000. I can simplify by crossing out those 2 0 placeholders. So 3 divided by 100 is 3%, or 0.03 as a decimal. 0.03 times 100 to get it into a percent is 3% interest rate. You always have to convert that decimal into a percent. Now I'd like you to try E on page 170 and show your work. Pause the video to work that out. In class tomorrow, I will be checking the following 3 things. I'm going to be checking your classwork from Tuesday, page 155, numbers 1 through 9. Then I'm going to be checking the homework, which we didn't finish in class, so it became homework. This is page 163, 1 through 7. And lastly, I will be checking your video notes for video 2-8. So make sure you have these 3 assignments for class tomorrow. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you then. Bye.